Party. It is a way of life, an evil and malignant way of life. It reveals a condition akin to disease, and spreads like an epidemic.
The United States is under nuclear attack.
The United States knows that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. The UK knows that they have weapons of mass destruction. Any country on the face of the earth with an active intelligence program knows that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction,
which could be activated within 45 minutes, including against his own Shia population.
The choice is his. And if he does not disarm, the United States of America will lead a coalition and disarm him in the name of peace.
In the days ahead, you will see evidence of the truth of Secretary Rumsfeld's statement yesterday when he said Saddam Hussein was given a choice by the international community to give up his weapons of mass destruction.
By Saddam's spokesman on television, said the U.S. had gone too far by occupying Arab lands and by imposing an economic blockade. The blockade exceeds all humanitarian limits, the statement said. The U.S. should not indulge further and should abandon its idea of pushing things to a military confrontation.
What is ISIS? What is ISIS? What is ISIS? Offshoot of Al-Qaeda, offshoot of Al-Qaeda, offshoot of Al-Qaeda.
And it is for this reason that we have always needed this foreign threat and this foreign crisis in order to justify putting the money into military expenditures instead of converting the economy once and for all to human purposes.
When Muslim fundamentalist terrorists, zealots, fanatics, they're terrorists for goodness sake, they want
to overthrow all governments, even the American government, by force and violence.
And we'll overthrow it by force and violence. We'll have our way if it means bloodshed and terror. That is the Communist Party truth as seen by Marx, Lenin, and Stalin.
They want to overthrow all governments, even the American government, even the American government.
And no matter how hard we try, no matter how much we bend, no matter how much we compromise, Islamic fanatics will never stop in their war on Western and Christian values and virtues until they win.
Communism is a lying, dirty, shrewd, godless, murderous, determined, lying, dirty, shrewd, godless.
During those 40-odd years of the Cold War, the CIA has been a very important factor or tool or instrument of the President of the United States in waging what is continuing today. The north-south dimension of the old Cold War, that is the war against the Third World for control of their natural resources, their labor, and their market.
President Johnson ordered the troop movement. The Leathernecks were airlifted to the capital of Santo Domingo. Meanwhile, the U.S. Marines have also taken center stage in South Vietnam. Meanwhile, the U.S. Marines...
Defend democracy in Panama. Defend democracy in Panama. In Panama.
The U.S. goes to war against the Caribbean island of Grenada.
Covert war against the Sandinista government in Nicaragua with the CIA and with Israeli arms dealers helped coordinate an arms supply network to provide weapons to Contra bases in northern Costa Rica.
This north-south dimension of the Cold War, the war against the Third World, continues today as we sit here with all its racist content. And we and our allies, that is the United States and its allies, are just as dependent, if not more, on the resources of these countries in the Third World as they ever were. And that dependency is not going to disappear. It's going to keep on growing through the years. So what I think Bush has in mind is, through this Persian Gulf crisis, to send a message to any aspiring Third World leader that Third World radical nationalism will not be tolerated, will not be tolerated.
Iran, 1953. The CIA mounted its first major covert operation to overthrow a foreign government. American oil companies took over almost half of Iran's production, over almost half. U.S. arms merchants moved in with $18 billion of weapons sales over the next 20 years. Guatemala, 1954. Flushed with success, America's secret government decided another troublesome leader must go. This time it was Jacobo Arbenz, the democratically elected president of Guatemala. The CIA had called its covert action against Guatemala Operation Success. Military dictators ruled the country for the next 30 years. The United States provided them with weapons and trained their officers. Cuba, 1961. 7 years after Operation Success in Guatemala, Bissell was planning another CIA covert operation. On April 17, 1961, Cuban exiles trained by the CIA at a base in friendly Guatemala landed on the southern coast of Cuba at the Bay of Pigs. The U.S. had promised air support, but President Kennedy canceled it. The invaders, left defenseless, surrendered.
All free men and nations live under the constant threat of the communist advance.
Los parásitos y los hijos de los parásitos que quieran enarbolar la bandera vergonzosa de
constant threat of the communist advance.
By the early 1960s, left-wing revolutionary groups were fighting the authorities in Guatemala, Venezuela, Colombia, Peru, and the Dominican Republic.
A reforma agrária feita em termos da reforma.
CBS reports, Brazil. Here is Eric Severa.
When Cuba erupted into communism, we asked ourselves, why? Why did it happen? Could we have prevented it?
The United States became conscious of Cuba when a man with a beard seized power 3 years ago. We became conscious of Brazil when a man with a mustache quit power 2 months ago. Cuba is gone. As Brazil goes, so goes South America.
Produtivas e as distribuiu a 10.000 agricultores da região de Sarandi.
We want the Brazilian foreign policy to be Brazilian. We want to put the Brazilian interest before everything.
It is time for foresight, because Brazil is growling and rumbling with potential explosion.
There are American companies that have made here in the last 10 years things like 200% a year, 300% a year, even 1,000%.
I think we ought to take every step that we can, be prepared to do everything that we need to do. I had to get right on top of it and stick my neck out a little. We just can't take this one, and
200% a year, 300% a year, even 1,000% a year.
Estabelecendo a ordem e livrando o país dos trapos vermelhos que ameaçavam sufocá-lo.
Consistently moved the red bloc after his country was unable to pay foreign debts to Western powers. His country was unable to pay foreign debts to Western powers.
Ambassador Gordon and the American government welcome the change. This is headquarters for 1,200 Americans on government service throughout Brazil. Their objective is to keep the most important nation in Latin America firmly committed to the West.
And he consistently moved the red bloc after his country was unable to pay foreign debts to Western powers. Was unable to pay foreign debts to Western powers. Was unable to pay foreign debts to Western powers.
April 1965. April 1965. 2 battalions of Marines land in South Vietnam, the first of more than 2.5 million Americans to fight there with no congressional declaration of war. The dirty little war that began in secret is reaching full roar. Free fire zones, defoliation, the massacre at My Lai, napalm, and the CIA's Operation Phoenix to round up, torture, and kill suspected Viet Cong.
We were murdering these people.
Angola, a country at war, rich in natural resources, as large as France and Spain together, a left-wing government supported by the Cubans fights a continual battle against a guerrilla army backed by the South Africans. Despite the CIA's best efforts, the armies they supported never stood much of a chance once Cuban soldiers arrived in the autumn of 1975 to help the MPLA.
They rose up in 1979 against him. Death to the Shah, they shouted. Death to the American Satan.
Khomeini is a direct consequence, and the hostage crisis is a direct consequence, and the resurgence of the Shia is a direct consequence of the CIA's overthrow of Mossadegh in 1953. Is a direct consequence of the CIA's overthrow of Mossadegh in 1953.
Assassination, false promises, counterfeit mobs, and crises.
The president was not telling the truth. Even as he spoke, his administration was planning a new covert war on Cuba.
On the high seas and the Gulf of Tonkin have today required me to order the military forces of the United States to take action in reply.
This president was not telling the truth either.
We want education for our people that teaches us the true nature of this decadent American society, this decadent American society, this decadent American